Guy Kawasaki, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Todd. Thank you.
Great to have you here. I know a lot of people are excited to have you. You know, us here in the gaming industry, we don't often get Silicon Valley legends coming to say hello to us. So, every day I live in a world of trying to think about innovation. I know our whole industry tries to think about this, and you're sort of at the center of the center. You've got some of the most viewed podcasts or viewed TED Talks on the internet, talking about innovation. Worked with Steve Jobs a couple of times. Just incredible legend in the world of innovation, author of a dozen books. How would you describe yourself, Guy?
Well, with much greater modesty than that. I am Chief Evangelist of Canva, which is the online graphics design service, creator of the Remarkable People podcast, and that's it right now. In a prior life, I was Chief Evangelist of Apple. I was a Mercedes-Benz brand ambassador, and I was a board of trustee of the Wikimedia, which is Wikipedia organization. So, yeah, I've been around a long time.
I got to say, it's so cool. I mean, like all of us in pretty much like every industry that ever talks about innovation, we all talk about like, Apple and Steve Jobs. And,
Sure.
I'm sitting here talking to a guy that was at the center of the center on like the marquee project, maybe in the history of Apple. And you were at the center of the center working with the master. That had to be just an incredible time. And I got a question, like when you were actually living through it, did you know you were living through history
Not at all.
Yeah, I bet.
Not at all. And yes, to really back up that sentiment that I didn't know, I left Apple twice and I turned Steve Jobs down for another opportunity. So in a sense, I walked away from Apple 3 times. So if I knew that I was in the center of the universe and it's going to be $1 trillion company, I would have stayed.
Yeah, we're all great at predicting the past.
Yeah, but that's kind of a monumental blunder. This is not this is not like, I never should have eaten that piece of bacon. This is a lot bigger than that.
So, why at the moment of truth, what did you just view Apple as like, yeah, it's another company. They're doing fine, they're growing, they're popular, they're known.
Part of it is a Silicon Valley disease. And I mean that in a positive sense, that we always think we can do better. And so I quit Apple twice to start companies. And at the point of quitting, I really thought, okay, I'm going to start a new company and this is going to be better than Apple. Not necessarily bigger, but with more benefits and more payoff and more fun than Apple. So clearly I was wrong. And that's part of being in Silicon Valley. Otherwise, we all would have stayed working for Hewlett-Packard or Intel or National Semiconductor. But people quit those kind of companies because of fundamental optimism, borderlining on delusion, that there can be a better way, there can be a better company. It's better to be an entrepreneur. For the longest time, if you told somebody you work for a company for 20 years in Silicon Valley, the reaction would not necessarily be, you've made a career, you've been really successful. It would be like, why have you not quit? Like, what's wrong with you? It's a very different perspective. So one of the lessons I learned looking back in my career is that contrary to the belief of always trying to optimize and find where the grass is greener, you could make the case that you should water and fertilize the grass you're standing on, because the grass is not necessarily greener, and maybe you can make your grass greener where you already are.
Do you think maybe we've not we, you and me, but like, do you think maybe the general Silicon Valley mentality has maybe overshot it a little bit? Maybe they don't need to stay 20 years, but maybe they're so looking for the next thing. Do you feel like it's sort of in the sweet spot, or what?
Well, if you looked at my case, you'd have to say we overshot it. But
You're a pioneer.
This is one of those management book conundrums that whenever you read a management book, whether it's written by me or anybody else, it's not really quote unquote scientific. There was no hypothesis being tested. There was no controlled experiment, right? So in my case, looking back, I could tell you there's 2 or 3 times where I should have stayed and watered the grass I was standing on. On the other hand, you may pick up another book and that book will say, yeah, the best thing I ever did was quit XYZ and I started this and, now I'm Elon Musk. And so when people read those 2 books, they're like, what do you do? Do you pivot or do you gut it out? Pivot or gut it out? And you could build the case either way, but nobody has really done this statistical analysis of, if you pivot, there's an X% chance of success. If you gut it out, there's an X% of chance. And then we conducted a scientific experiment where we controlled all the variables except changing the business. And balancing all those other factors, we can prove scientifically it's better to do X. There's no such thing.
And it's so hard because the stories all get written about, is it Mark Benioff left Oracle, was it, I think?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. So they get written about, you leave Oracle and then you get to go and start Salesforce and you get to become a multi-billionaire. People don't write the books about maybe it's 100 to 1 or 1,000 to 1 or 100,000 to 1 stories on the other side. So you get this very wild selection bias.
Yeah, it's total selection bias. And it also vastly oversimplifies the situation that, Mark Benioff worked for Oracle. He had an idea to make cloud-based software, so he quit and he started Salesforce. And now, he's got the tallest building in San Francisco and, UCSF hospital's named after him. But there were a few other details in there. And you know what? You only hear about the Larry Ellisons, the Steve Jobs, the Elon Musk, the Mark Benioffs. This list is short. We could go down through 10 or 15 names, and you never hear about the 15,000 names who never escaped the pull of gravity. Mm-hmm. But so it's really it almost makes your head explode. I mean, I could apply the same line of thinking. I could apply the same line of thinking to professional athletics, right? So you only hear about the LeBron James and you only hear about the Wayne Gretzky's and you don't hear about the 7,500 other kids who tried that year. And overall, in the NHL, I don't know, there's 26 teams, let's call it 30 players each. There's 1,000 people playing professional hockey. Well, there's probably 1 million kids in Canada who tried to play professional hockey. So you can't just look at the successes and say, okay, so that's the path. Now, on the other hand, if you really think about it, there's maybe 1,000 people making money in any professional sport, but at Google or Apple, there's 100,000 people making a decent living, right? It's just the probability of being successful in Apple or Google and making a decent living is much greater than being a professional athlete.
Yeah, in some ways, it's almost a curse to be like Division I college level good at something and just on the cusp of whether you can go pro or not. It's very hard to keep perspective about, maybe I need to have a career outside of whatever sport that you're in.
I don't think there's any doubt about that because you are one ACL tear away from not being in the top tier, right? I mean, it's that simple. And I would say that I bet you if you did an analysis that the average programmer, gaming programmer over a lifetime makes more money than most professional athletes who are, you know what I'm saying? There is only one LeBron, right? Yeah. There's only one Michael Jordan. And maybe those guys, I heard some statistic that the average NFL career is 3 years. Mm-hmm. So 3 years, you make, I don't know, $2 million a year. So $6 million. On the other hand, you're a top programmer and you make, I don't know, $250,000 a year for 20 years plus the stock options. You're better paid than a professional athlete, and and you don't have concussions all the time.
Right. You can buy stock in Tesla or government bonds.
Yeah. Yes.
And you can live your life
Yes.
the same way. Yeah, it's well, I've been a staffer my whole life, and I feel very fortunate to know about myself. I don't want to start a company. I don't want to. I
Yeah.
like being in big, huge, giant companies where I have resources to do everything, and all I have to do all day long is just think. And I feel very, very, very
That's
lucky.
awesome.
But I don't think I would fit in very well in the Silicon Valley.
Well, that's not
What do you do?
necessarily
What are you
negative.
doing? You want to stay where you are?
I'm sorry?
People would say to me in the Silicon Valley, Todd, what are you doing? You want to stay where you are for the next 5 years? Yeah, I do.
I mean, seriously, I mean, that is the mentality in Silicon Valley, or at least it was. Now, I'm not saying that's optimal, and it's definitely not for everyone. But I think one of the realizations we have to understand is that it's two kinds of, beasts. So one kind of beast wants to slay the dragon, and another kind of beast is the person who gets the slain dragon and puts systems in place and puts in, guidelines and operates the business and makes the version 1 go to 1.1 as opposed to version 1 go to 2. So, it takes different kinds of people and mindsets. There is the entrepreneur, slay the dragon, take the hill. And then there is the person who, okay, so now the hill is taken. We need to put in the water. We need to turn on the electricity. We need to get the school system. We need to put in plans and voting systems and all that. That person is just as important. But you never read about them.
No. So let's talk about that mountain of people that you never read about. This will be kind of a fun subject, right? So okay, we all get that people read about Benioff and Gates and all that.
Right.
And so if you had to talk about the traits of the entrepreneur who failed, what would you say are the common traits of that group?
The common traits of the entrepreneur who failed is probably a combination of bad luck, poor timing, and delusional personality. not necessarily in that order. And what I mean by this is if you look at the entrepreneurs who were successful, a lot of it is good luck and being in the right place and good timing. That, if Steve Jobs wasn't there when chips were just coming out and getting more powerful and cheaper, who knows? The person who created the Newton for Apple, which was the first PDA, it was too big, too slow, too whatever. That person was that person incompetent, or was that person just bad timing? If that person had come out 10 years later, chips would be cheaper, faster, things would be smaller, it would be a different world. So a lot of it, I think, is timing, and a lot of it is luck, and that is one of the downfalls of Silicon Valley is that people have a very hard time separating luck from causation. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's to use the surfing analogy, there are many times I just turn around and paddle and I catch the wave, and that was just pure dumb luck. It wasn't skill, because there are, many more times where I think I know exactly what I'm doing and I don't catch the wave. So as I get older and older, I've come to believe that it's better to be lucky than smart.
It's fascinating to think, had Jeff Bezos, for whatever weird reason, started 2 years earlier or 2 years later, if he would still be where he is. And there's
no
a
kidding.
very strong case to be made that no, he would have missed it, or others would have been Jeff Bezos and not him.
Listen, so let's take that case. So if I were doing a critique of Amazon in the early days, I would say, okay, so people will buy stuff like books because there's no size, there's no color, there's no smell, right? There's no freshness to books. People will buy CDs. It's this easy, simple thing that you just stick in an envelope. People will buy DVDs. But then when you get to, there's this company called Zappos, and it's for people to buy shoes. I would have said there is no way that's going to work, because to me, buying a shoe, especially if you're into fashion, I really would think that you have to see the shoe, you have to try on the shoe, you have to see the color, Is it comfortable? The leather, how does it smell? I mean, there's like a whole thing with buying shoes, right? It's not click on this, put it in my shopping basket. And obviously Zappos, which was acquired by Amazon, succeeded. So, what the hell do I know? But I would not have thought people would buy shoes. Now, I think to Zappos' credit, what they did is they made buying the shoe risk-free by paying for returns. And so you could return the shoe at no cost. So whereas other e-commerce companies, if you wanted to return something, you had to call an 800 number to get a return authorization number, and that put you in a phone tree. And then 30 minutes later, they finally tell you, okay, here's your return number. You need to take it, put it in a box, and ship it to us. And you pay shipping, and if we get it, we'll let you know.
Yeah, they made it intentionally difficult because their accountants had run the numbers that if this percentage of the people return and this and that, and Tony Hsieh was looking way out.
Yes.
And he had a vision. Yeah, it's hard to hold the line though.
Well, I mean, can you imagine encountering an accountant who said, listen, so if we pay shipping both ways, it's going to have this cost, but I have calculated that cost is minuscule compared to the amount of trust that we will create in the Zappos business model. So although we will get such and such return and such fraud, the fact that people think they can return shoes so easily will mean that they will buy more shoes, and they'll buy a shoe, 3 colors, and we think, oh my God, what if they send all 3 colors back? But once the shoe is in your house, no matter how easy Zappos or Amazon made it, you still had to put it back in the box. You had to take it to the UPS store. You had to do something, right? And at that point, you already paid. It's like, screw it, just keep it. And I don't know what accountant would have calculated and said, yeah, you know what, let's give free shipping because it's going to pay off in the long run.
And then when you're doing it, I've always used the example of Amazon Prime. Like, can you imagine the cost on the long tail of the extreme Amazon Prime users?
Okay.
Can you imagine the cost? And they hold the line. For all I know, maybe they actually kick some people off of Amazon Prime. I don't know. But basically, they're willing to eat it.
Amen, Todd. I mean, I'm a believer. Like, if you had told me, okay, guy, you pay, what is it, $75 a year, 100? I don't know. I don't even know what it is. So you
can double it. I'll still pay. It's fine.
Okay, you pay $200 a year. But then you get guaranteed overnight delivery. And then, I mean, if an accountant did an analysis of Amazon Prime, you'd have to say, oh my God, people are going to abuse this. They're going to buy a toothbrush. And then the next day they're going to buy toothpaste. And then the next day they're going to buy, Q-tips. And we're going to send out all overnight separate packages. And those things cost us, $15 to ship. And the Q-tip is $5. And so we're going to, and then they're going to send the Q-tips back. Oh my God. But I tell you, so Amazon Prime, just the pure convenience of it, and the thought that, so now I'm getting free music, free video, Amazon. What I think Amazon should have done, what I think Amazon should have done when the vaccination started was they should have done a program where Amazon Prime, we bring the vaccine to you, right? So put nurses and doctors in the Amazon truck and say, okay, Amazon Prime customers, you will get the vaccine first. Oh my God. At least 150 million people would have signed up for Amazon Prime. There's 150
Is there 150 million people left that haven't
signed?
There's 150 million people left that haven't signed up for Prime yet? No, it's a great idea.
That's a good question. I wonder how many people, but if you, I don't know how we're going down these little rat holes here, but if you took the number of people who signed up for Amazon Prime and multiplied it by the price for Amazon Prime, that's a lot of money. That is a lot of return shoes.
Yeah, exactly. I never returned anything, so
I think Amazon Prime is one of the reasons that Amazon has reached such dominance. And right at the start of, imagine pitching the idea of Amazon Prime. That would be so scary. Everybody can get overnight delivery, and we're going to, after the third package, we're losing money, or, there's some calculation, right? But I guess people never, they can, it's easy to calculate this kind of risk, but it's very hard to calculate the upside of when people think, "Oh, Amazon Prime, I'm not going to go to the market. I'm just going to buy everything from Amazon Prime."
Yeah.
That has enormous upside.
And it's all held together by the simple idea, well, what does the customer want? And
What a
it's so
concept.
easy to lie to yourself and tell yourself, well, I don't think they really value that or this or the other.
Yeah.
And it's usually expensive to give the customer what they want because their demands are high. We have it in our business, and it's expensive to give them what they want. But the rewards are big. When you talk about the biggest brands in the world, they just delight their customers.
Yeah, I interviewed for my podcast a guy named Colin Bryar, and he was Jeff Bezos's chief of staff for a few years. And so he explained how it worked, and I was really blown away. So the title of his book is Working Backwards. And the concept here is that rather than thinking about what you're currently doing, what you can do, what gaming technology do we have, what iPhone technology do we have, what are we good at? We're good at multiplayer games. We're good at making handheld devices. Instead of working forward from what you can do or what you are doing, you work backwards from what people want. And I think that is a great insight, that working backwards means that kind of have a guaranteed customer. I mean, you're empathizing with the customer. They want that, so let's just build what we know they want instead of making the shit that we want and hoping they buy it.
Yeah, and then you tell yourself, not necessarily you or me, but like people, we tell ourselves a bunch of lies along the way. Okay, we're opening up a pizza restaurant. Okay, do they want high quality ingredients or low quality ingredients? Do they want pleasant ambiance or not? Do they want low prices or high prices? Do they want comfortable chairs or not? These are very simple concepts. We are not advanced creatures.
Well, and to use another metaphor that I think we encounter every day is, so working backwards. Oh yeah, our customers like CAPTCHA. And oh yeah, our customers, they want to help us solve this puzzle. Like, which picture has a stoplight in it? Click on all the pictures with a stoplight. Click on all the pictures that show a car, because our customers want to verify their identity. Yeah. I mean, what drug are they on?
I'll come in complaining about something. I'll say, like, I hate this thing that we did in our game. This is ridiculous. I should have caught it before, but I didn't. And they're like, well, Todd, we haven't really heard any complaints about it. I'm like, please stop. Okay, nobody's going to educate you how to make a good game, or us, or anything else. We missed it. It's bad. It's wrong. Please stop with, we haven't heard any complaints, as though that's somehow the measuring stick.
Yeah, that is a very slippery slope.
Yeah, the complaints are the missing people. Yeah. So I've got a question for you. So, I mean, Steve Jobs is, legendarily difficult and tough and everything else. I mean, you were there, you were in the room with him and stuff like that. Is he the tyrannical or, sledgehammer type guy that he's portrayed in popular media?
In short, yes.
Wow.
Well, okay, so it requires more than that answer. So the answer is yes. He was a tough guy, extremely demanding. And I will tell you with total honesty that he intimidated me, and I was scared of him. And I saw him just rip a few people in public, like rip them. He would not hesitate to rip you in public. And so, with all the positive, arguably toxic psychology, all the thought about, you need to communicate and be open and transparent and reach mutually beneficial goals and always focus on the positive and, constructively view the negative and, all this kind of pop psychology, HR, motivation, all that. Steve Jobs did none of that shit. I mean, I don't know about other people in the Mac division, but I was just deathly afraid that someday he would call on me and rip me in public. And I tell you something. Fear works as a motivating factor. At least it worked for me. And so, and I can talk about this and laugh about it because I survived it, but I don't think I would be where I am were it not for that fear and intimidation. It wasn't kumbaya, and it wasn't, unicorns much less farting pixie dust. I mean, it was a it was a scary place. But you know what? I think there are many tyrants in the world. There are many assholes in the world. Don't get me wrong. But Steve Jobs was brilliant, and he had vision, and he could call the future. So I think what people confuse about Steve Jobs is, so he was a difficult kind of asshole of a person. So if I want to be a Steve Jobs, that's what I'll be. Well, no, not really. I mean, the part of what made Steve Jobs special is, yes, he had those characteristics, but he also could call the future. I mean, he really knew what people would either want or what he could convince them they want. Whereas most people who just are in Steve Jobs emulation mode, they're just assholes. The asshole part is the easy part. It's the visionary part that's the hard part.
Do you think if he was like a super friendly, super charming guy, who every time he heard a bad idea, he's like, it's interesting, it's just not really my cup of tea. And do you think Apple would have been in the same spot, like just because his genius was so high?
Honestly, no.
It needed that. It needed.
I think that if he had been this kind of that's interesting, let's think about that, whatever, which he wasn't. He was like, that is shit. Like, what's wrong with you? Why would you even think? I mean, that would be his kind of reaction, right? I hope profanity is okay on this podcast. But anyway, so
rock and roll.
He would say, this is shit. Now, you could make the case that instead of saying to a guy, your work is shit, you could have said something like, did you really swing for the fences on this guy? Did you take a full swing or did you do a check swing? Arguably communicating the same kind of dissatisfaction, but maybe without most of the trauma. But I have to say that I don't think Apple would be where it is were he not like that. Now, this is such a dangerous thing, but this is not me advocating that everybody should be like that. Okay, because it isn't necessary to just rip people, but I think the reason why he got away with it, and in fact it became a feature as opposed to a bug, is that most of the time he was right. I mean, right? I mean,
it forgives a lot of sins, yeah.
And I think people understand that he was right. And so you upped your game. I'll tell you a Steve Jobs story. So one day I'm in my cubicle, I'm working, and he shows up with somebody I never met. And he doesn't introduce this person. He just says, "Guy, what do you think of this company called Nowhere?" It was an educational software company. I said, "Well, Steve, I got to tell you, it's a mediocre company, mediocre product, drill and practice, 2 + 2 = 4. Doesn't really take advantage of all the goodness of Macintosh. It's not a strategic product or company for us." So I'm like ripping on this product and company, right? And then he says, "Guy, I want you to meet the CEO of Nowhere." Now, so, lesson number one is tell the truth. If I had tried to be, I didn't exactly say it's a piece of shit, but I definitely didn't say it's the world's greatest piece of educational software. So if you really believe it's not great, you should tell the truth. And I'll tell you the backstory of this story is that, knowing what I know, there's a very good case that Steve was there's a very good case to be made that what happened was Steve was meeting with this CEO, okay? And the CEO says, "Oh, yeah, we're doing so well, and our software is just flying off the shelves. We can't keep it in stock. Our software is revolutionary, patent pending, curve jumping. It's going to change education in America. Our software is so good." And then Steve would say, "No, it's not. It's shit." And the guy said, No. We're selling thousands of copies and we're getting awards from teachers. And, we have the most amazing educational software in the history of man. And Steve would say, "No, it's not. You got shit." And then Steve would say, "Let's go see Guy. Guy is my software evangelist. Let's go see what he says." So they walk over to my cube and I more or less, reinforce what Steve says. Now, if I had said, "Oh no, Steve, this is freaking like, amazing software that's going to revolutionize educational software and, the teaching world," I probably would have been fired on the spot. Steve probably would have said, "Guy, you're so freaking clueless. I can't have you as my software evangelist."
He was clearly like sort of, if I was doing that, if I was introducing you, I'd be like, "Hey, I want you to meet the CEO," and and that would be your tip to not destroy,
right?
But clearly, so it's like, okay, here we go. Yeah,
I only know the TV side of him, but it's kind of like Gordon Ramsay of tech. Like you gotta now. This is an interesting thing. I would bet that if you asked people who have worked as chefs for Gordon Ramsay, I bet a lot of people might say, well, he just ripped me and it was very traumatic, but he made me the chef that I am. Mm-hmm. And as I look back on my life, I will tell you that the teachers and the bosses who were the hardest on me taught me the most. It's not the ones that I could buffalo or the ones that, let me slack off. It's the ones that held my feet to the fire. Now, in Steve's case, he didn't just hold your feet to the fire. He threw you in the fire. But
why? I mean, this is in a world now. It's like it's Steve Jobs. He could literally come in every day and throw his coffee on me, and I'd be like, no problem. But I have the benefit. Yes, sorry, you spilled your coffee. Sorry, I was in the way of your coffee there, Mr. Jobs. But that's what the benefit of history of working for a legend. When you're living through history, why did people take it? When they didn't know they were working for the legend.
Even when he was alive, and so, Macintosh was introduced in '84. I think Steve got fired in, I don't know. Well, I don't know when he was fired. I mean, it was 5 years later or something like that, right? Mm-hmm. But even then, just creating Apple with the Apple II, the success of Apple in Silicon Valley. He wasn't the legend that we think of him as now, but he was a very successful, entrepreneur. I mean, people admired Apple already with the Apple II. So it's not like he was a nobody and he got away with it. He had a track record at that point. So that's one factor that you have to, even at that point, he was pretty legendary. Not as legendary as now, but he was right up there already. And it was an honor and a privilege to work for him. So that's one thing. And then, but I think even more of an important factor is he was right. When he told you had something that was shit, he was right. Yeah. I mean, he really was right. And when he told you that you had something great, which was very seldom, he was also right. So I think a lot of it is that he wasn't smoking you just because he wanted a power play, right? It wasn't just because he wanted to feel like the big man. He was smoking you because you didn't do a good job. Mm-hmm. He was right most of the time.
Yeah. Yeah, so to listeners and viewers, being a jerk isn't the recipe. No. Being right is the recipe. and then if you're really right all the time, then maybe you can be a little bit nasty and maybe get away with it. But
yeah, I think it's very high risk strategy to think you're the next Steve Jobs.
I don't advise it either. Yeah.
Somebody at Theranos is finding that out right now.
Exactly. Yeah.
Well, I would say that if you think you're the next Steve Jobs, you're not.
Right. Yeah. So, Apple famously wrecked the cell phone industry as it was known. I think on the cover of Forbes, like back in 2007 or something like that, there was like this thing. It's a Nokia. Can anybody stop them? And it's like this fascinating cover.
Or
like,
Motorola.
Yeah, exactly. And even in Motorola in Google's hands, right? And right. And so it's fun to think this. This is a fun question. Who is the Nokia of 2007 or Motorola of 2021?
Oh.
Who might be?
Uh, General Motors, maybe. Um, let's face it. The closest thing we have to Steve Jobs right now is Elon Musk. And Elon
Yep.
Musk, in my humble opinion, single-handedly made electric cars viable.
Yeah.
And so, if it wasn't for Elon Musk, do you think General Motors and all the other car manufacturers would be making electric cars? No freaking way, right?
No way.
They'd be
No
like,
chance.
we'd be cutting down trees. We'd be digging for oil. We'd be, pipelines across America. It would be a different world, right? So, I mean, that. It's amazing what, one person can do. Elon Musk or Steve Jobs. I mean, you could listen, I've never met Elon Musk, so I have no idea, but you could make the case that Elon Musk may have more impact on the world than Steve, because Steve brought us computers and smart devices, right? And they wiped out Nokia and Motorola. But Elon Musk, I mean, he's taking on the car business. He's making tunnels under cities. He's changing solar panels. He's sending people to Mars. I don't understand his whole cyber currency thing, but Elon Musk is in a lot of places.
You're over there in the center of the center, in the Silicon Valley, and so if you think about a world where Elon just hadn't been born, you can make the case that like he's literally doing things that weren't otherwise going to happen, and I think that's how he chooses those things, is because he looks at them and says they're not going to happen naturally unless I do them myself. So bless Elon. But why isn't there more innovation out there? Like we were on the moon in 1969, and we built the Hoover Dam. We built the Empire State Building in 18 months. We used to do big things. And like, okay, coronavirus, we found the cure pretty quickly. So, we can still do stuff when we try. Why isn't there more of it? Absent Elon Musk, we'd be like, where's all the innovation?
I don't know, man. It's like, do you have any hard questions for me? I would say that a lot of it is that the larger a company, and ironically, the more successful, the harder it is to get to what I call the next curve, right? So, to go way back in history, there used to be an ice harvesting industry where people would cut blocks of ice from a frozen lake or a pond. 50 years later, there was ice factory. Now, ice factory, you don't have to be in a cold city. You're not outside. You could have an ice factory in Honolulu. You couldn't harvest ice in Honolulu. Another 50 years go by, and now we have refrigerator. So now you don't have to be near the ice factory. The iceman doesn't have to deliver ice to your house. You have your own personal ice factory. But nobody went from harvester to factory to refrigerator company. That's because most people define themselves in terms of what they already do, as opposed to working backwards from what their customer wants. Because the customer of the ice harvester, the ice factory, and the refrigerator all want the same thing, right? They want convenience and cleanliness. They don't care if it's harvesting ice, freezing ice centrally, or personal refrigerator. They just want that benefit. And I think that is the very important lesson. And so, why is there not innovation? Because most companies think of themselves as, well, we make ice in an ice factory. That's our business. That's our mission. They don't wake up in the morning thinking, we provide cleanliness and convenience. How can we do that? And I'll give you a really scary negative example. And every time I think about this example, it just shocks me. So in 1975, an engineer at Kodak invented a digital camera. Okay, wrap your mind around that. An engineer at Kodak invented digital photography. Now, how many of us use a Kodak digital camera today? Zero. How many of us use Kodak film today? Well, maybe not zero, but close to zero. And so, I mean, can you imagine that engineer going to his boss saying, I figured out a way where people don't have to buy film anymore?
You're fired.
Yeah, like, that's a career limiting move. Like, okay, yeah, let's go tell the board of directors of Kodak, we figured out a way people don't have to buy film anymore. Give us a hero's welcome. But, you know, again, they should have worked backwards. They should have figured out that, you know, people are not buying film from Kodak. They're buying a way to preserve memories. And if you can preserve memories with a chip, with instant feedback on what the picture looked like, that's a better way. But if you're Kodak and you're publicly traded and you're worried about what Wall Street says in the next 89 days, because, you know, digital photography was going to take more than 89 days to make it financially viable, that's what happens. So I think that is the greatest killer of innovation, is probably this, you know, the larger you get, the more stuck you are, the more you have to report financial results every 90 days. I mean, it just becomes a whole downward spiral.
Mm-hmm. And do you think, like, is that how big companies sort of get blindsided? Is they just get this tunnel vision and they can't see? Is it literally just what you described? Plus maybe like, well, we can't gamble on a digital camera in this particular instance because that's going to eat into our, you know, it's going to destroy a couple quarters, and it's only got a 20% chance of maybe working according to the guys. Yeah.
Well, absolutely. I agree with you, Todd. All of that, plus what you alluded to before, you know, where you said, well, nobody's complaining, right? Referring to your own crew when when you say, you know, I did this wrong, but then they say, well, nobody's complaining. You know, what's the problem? Well, I don't think anybody was calling up Kodak saying,
right,
I want a digital camera, right? I mean, they're saying, I want Ektachrome to be deeper or richer or, you know, whatever. Nobody was calling up Kodak saying, I want a better way to do photography.
Yeah. I read this wonderful interview with, you know, maybe it was the chief product officer of Nintendo. And he was saying before they did the Wii, he's like, you know, if we had asked our players, what do you want? They would have asked for more advanced controls, more advanced games, more richer experience. And they would have never said, simplify everything. Give me a wand that my grandmother can play tennis in the living room with. And I just think that's so cool. And you get there by sitting alone in a room and thinking. You know, your customers don't tell you, nobody tells you. And but I find that fascinating.
God, I completely agree. I mean, I think one of the worst sources for true innovation for a company is its customer base. Because thinking back on my experience at Apple, I hate to disappoint you, but there was no Apple II user calling us up saying, you know, we need to have a new computer that is graphical user interface with a mouse, 9-inch display, monochrome, not compatible with Apple II software. I don't think anybody called us up and said, give us that computer. And so, you know, for I think for the gaming business, some visionary, Todd or somebody has to be, God, you know, we got to get to AR. We got to get to, you know, all this kind of stuff, because people might not be able to call up and say, yeah, I want an AR game, or I want to, I want to put on goggles and be in a 3D immersive world, but it's your job to anticipate what they will come. Well, you have a twofold job. You either have to anticipate what they will come to want, or you have to build what you can and make them want it.
What's interesting is you're spot on. Like in the actual game development process, you know, casino game development process, you sort of, like you touched on it earlier, you work backwards from the player's seat. What do they want? Do they want a game that's very clearly and plainly honest, or not? Yeah, okay, for sure they want that. Do they want a game that pays back that pays back a high percentage or a low percentage? They want a high percentage, you know. And do they want something that's fun and rich? Okay, yes, they do. And so, like, okay, check. Now it might be expensive, it might be risky, and it's a little bit like writing a hit song. You know, it's hard to get a song that's a real foot tapper, but you know, if you just put yourself in the other seat and you work backwards, I think there's a lot. I think there's a lot to be learned from that. I think that's a very cool idea.
I absolutely agree. And, you know, I would say that the probability of failing working backwards is much lower than the probability of failing working forwards. unless you're Steve Jobs. Now, Steve Jobs is clearly the exception to the rule, right? Because I don't know. I don't know, because Steve Jobs was an order of magnitude more visionary and intelligent than I am. So I don't know how his thinking was. Was it, people can't express what they really need, but working backwards from what they really need, even though they don't realize it yet, let's build this. That would be one interpretation of Steve. Another interpretation of Steve was, I'm going to build this freaking thing because I want to use it, and trust me, they will want to use it too. And it could be either one, but for most companies, it's neither is the point.
So why is landing on the answer so hard to come by? And then maybe what tricks do you have? People are watching this and they're thinking, we're trying to come up with the next big thing or whatever.
Right.
And they're going to run the scale. Some of them will be super innovative. Some of them will lack it entirely.
Right.
And, why is it so hard, and how can they get better at landing on the answer?
Well, I have several thoughts. So thought number one is work backwards, obviously, right? So that requires empathy. That requires walking a mile in your customer's shoes, all that kind of stuff. So one is this empathetic work backwards. A second theory would be, and I think this is true in Silicon Valley, that the successful Silicon Valley startups are the ones that the founders build what they want to use. So in a sense, it's even better than working backwards. It's working from within, right? So if Woz wanted a personal computer, he built it. Luckily, he wasn't the only person who wanted it. So you can't exactly say that Woz was working backwards. I think he was working from his soul. So that would be another theory. Build the product or service that you want to use and just hope that you're not the only psychopath who wants it. That would be another theory.
May I just say how hard that is in the real world? Like, I'm in a big publicly traded company now, and I talk to competitors and I talk to operators. There's so much pressure to say, give me something that's for people in this country or this market or this profile of player or this. And honestly, to your earlier advice, we, for the most part, listen to ourselves and we make the games that we're dying to play tomorrow. And so far, it's working. But it's so hard. The heat in the kitchen is intense. We need games for this market. We need games for these kinds of players. It's hard.
Well, it may be that, gaming is such a different world that, and I use this in a positive sense, but if you're a gamer, geek, or nerd, and you build the game that you want to use, I would say that's very high probability, as opposed to what? You're putting yourself in the place of someone who has a undergraduate degree, a bachelor's with 2.4 kids, who's driving a Volvo. Let's make the game for that demographic. I mean, give me a break. What is that going to be? You're going to go back to Frogger. I mean, I think for you, I would make the case that great works of literature are also people were writing for themselves. They weren't thinking, I'm going to write this book for this kind of reader. I think a great book comes out that, you're spilling your guts on the table.
Yeah.
It's not about, targeting a demographic.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you want to read it yourself? Do you want to play it yourself? Do you want to consume it yourself? Yeah.
Oh, I will give you a maybe even better theory that is you're doing it based on what your wife is telling you she needs. Now that is a rich vein.
I don't think there's any shortage of products out there then.
That would be the richest vein.
Is there, if you're a small company out there, so I'm in a big company, but there's a lot of small companies, and I want to see these small companies sort of thrive. I love the casino industry. I love gaming industry. The more, the merrier. Everybody is good. It's good. If you're a small company, how should you be thinking or operating differently than if you're a big company?
Well, I think the most important concept is that a small company, a startup, an early company, a young company has to realize that a startup, young company, small company, is not a small version of a big company. And I think many, many small startups think, oh, I'm just a small version of General Motors or Apple or Tesla or, pick anything. So I think it's completely two different kind of animals. And a big company usually knows what its customers want. They can do these incremental revisions. The financial model is set. Everything, you can crank a spreadsheet and predict almost everything, except the invention that wipes you off the face of this earth. But, so more or less, a big old company can operate with that kind of perspective. But a startup cannot be thinking like that. They have to be thinking, how do we get to the next curve? How do we destroy old companies? It's a completely different mindset. And so step number one is, do not think of yourself as a small, big company. You are a different animal. I'll give you a very illustration at the startup phase. So I think at the start of many companies, you have to do things that cannot possibly scale and you couldn't do as a large company. And so let's take an example of software, right? So if you're a young software company, you need to establish some success for funding, for brand awareness, for revenue, so you need to establish them. So you have to bend over backwards. If you find a large company, you find a specific group, you have to customize your software for them. You have to train them. You have to do everything for them so that somebody becomes your key customer, your reference account, whatever. And that's with the full realization that, oh my God, if every customer required custom software, training, hand-holding, on-site visitation, if we had to do that for every customer, we could not succeed. Well, I'm telling you, you have to do that at the start because you need to get traction. And trust me when I tell you, if you get traction, you will figure out a way to make your business scalable. But if you think from day one, you're thinking, how can I make my business scalable? You probably will create such a piece of crap that nobody wants it. You won't have to worry about scalability. Worrying about scalability is a high quality problem. I tell you, every VC in the world is thinking, just give me this investment where the biggest challenge is they can't ship fast enough. That is a high quality problem. Most companies and most VCs, their biggest problem is nobody is signing up for the service. We cannot get any traction. I would love to have the constant problem of, oh my God, my entire portfolio, none of them can scale fast enough. Leads are coming in too fast. Oh my God, what a problem that would be.
Yeah. You don't need to solve for the problem of 10 years from now, I guess.
Yeah. Because you know what? You're a small company. You got to do stuff that no large company would do. Right? No large. If you wanted to create a new word processor, you're going to have to handhold people to get these early influencers and thought leaders to use your word processor. This is very different than, someday we're going to be like Microsoft, so people have to just be able to buy Office and get going. You're not a small version of Microsoft. You're a completely different beast.
Fascinating, yeah. I think that's great. So, we're in the casino business. It's going online now.
Yeah.
It's increasingly coming to America. DraftKings, FanDuel, you hear increasingly about it. We're there in Pennsylvania, New Jersey, Michigan, some other states coming. And it's starting to make waves. Wall Street's starting to pay attention. Are you hearing any buzz about it in the Silicon Valley? Silicon Valley's been very central in social casino, which has the word casino in it, but there's nothing gambling about it. Are you starting to hear any buzzes about that in Silicon Valley yet, or not really?
Not really, but that doesn't mean it's not happening because, I'm like 67 years old sitting in a closet in Santa Cruz surfing half the day. So I'm not a good data point.
Life
And
is
you know
good.
what? I would also make the case, Todd, that yeah, I mean, in a perfect world, you'd love if I told you, yeah, everybody's just bouncing off the ceiling thinking about this. But on the other hand, I would make the case that, you know what? A 67-year-old who's semi-retired, who doesn't understand your business and doesn't know what's happening in your business, that's not necessarily a bad thing.
Yeah.
I mean,
Let me tell you something. I'm very relaxed to hear that Google and Amazon are not thinking about our business. That's
yeah,
perfectly fine by us. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. So,
I think, you know, I would be more worried about two guys in a garage or two gals in a garage or a guy and a gal in a garage in the computer science degree at Stanford saying, man, we can make a better casino game than this. That's who I would worry about. I
yeah,
think
yeah.
your job there is to hire those people and make them, you know, eat you from the inside.
Well, we're looking for them. If they're out there, call me. Find me, call me. We're looking. We want the innovative people.
What's it like to live in Malta?
It's awesome. So this is like the ground zero. This is like Las Vegas of online gaming, and so you know we don't have the glitzy buildings to show it. It's just a bunch of rooms with surfers, but this is ground zero, and so it is like the intellectual capital of the casino gaming world right now, because online is way faster than land-based at the moment. And you can just iterate faster. There's more games. There's more everything.
Sure.
And so, it's a buzz with action. Like I'm a pure casino guy through and through. Like when I was 10 years old, I'm like, oh, casino. And so,
10 years old, you're shooting craps?
Yeah. No, literally, not shooting craps, but I was literally inventing a dice game, running around the neighborhood with my skateboard and a what do you call it? A case of Coke, an empty cardboard case that 4 6-packs goes in here, and then another one going this way. And then I had all the prizes on this wall, and I would sell rolls to kids for 50 cents. Yeah. So I'm just, this is what I was born to do, and now I make games for a living at the highest level, and it's a blast. And this is the last job I need, and so I'm thrilled. And being around the other people and there's different people. There's like online streamers in the YouTube world, and then there's operators of casinos, and then there's other game makers, and it's a buzz with action, and it's cool. It's this tiny little pinprick in the middle of the Mediterranean, and it's awesome.
Wow.
Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah.
Huh.
So why don't we
have to visit you someday.
We have the biggest game. Please come out. I'd love to show you around. So a lot of cruise ships stop here, actually. So when your cruise ship stops here, you ring me up. So the biggest game we have is called Lightning Roulette. So why don't we do a Lightning Roulette round? And the fun of this is I'll shout out a word. I got 1, 2, 3, 4. I got 5 of them. You tell me your reaction to how it will be in 2030. Cool?
In 2030?
In 2030.
Frick, I don't know how things will be in 2022. Well, okay.
Don't worry, that makes it easier. It's harder. It takes much longer to prove you're wrong or right.
Good point.
Yeah. So
good point.
Okay. Virtual reality.
Wait. So, is it just a positive thumbs up or thumbs down?
No.
What am I saying?
Just a quick thought. What do you think its future is gonna? What's it gonna look like in 2030? It's all
totally immersive, just totally addictive. People be going crazy because it's too addictive and too attractive.
Wow. Okay. Bold on VR. The smartphone.
Smartphone will be implanted in your brain. You wouldn't even have to carry anything anymore.
No more bricks.
It'll be Apple Guy Play.
Wow. You think actually in the brain, or you think basically the brick is eradicated?
My prediction is that by 2030, an Apple iPhone will last 24 hours without a charge. They're gonna just push the edge. They'll finally get their batteries together.
I grew up in a world where we would make a phone call, and there was no concept of a dropped call. That didn't exist. That was now 1/3 of all phone calls. That's just sorry, I lost you there.
Yeah, and that's in Silicon Valley.
Yeah,
right?
we accept that. Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. The irony may be that in countries that never had good copper infrastructure, they could skip all that and go straight to good cellular infrastructure, right? So you may have better cellular coverage where there was never good copper coverage.
Yeah, that's interesting. There's some country that's, you know, way behind, and they're laying down their cell network for the first time with 5G.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
That's a high quality problem. Yeah.
Yeah.
Whereas in Silicon Valley, I can't drive on 101 with
Yeah. Exactly.
I'm in a
Exactly.
1G world here. Yeah.
Yeah. Bitcoin.
Gone.
I like it. Bold.
I don't understand Bitcoin. I got to tell you, I do not understand Bitcoin. Todd, if I said to you, okay, so Guy, we want you to make a speech and we're going to pay you in Bitcoin. And I would say, so you're telling me you're going to pay me in something that if Elon Musk puts up a emoji could be worth twice as much or half as much. And if Elon Musk says, well, you take too much energy mining the Bitcoin, or like, let's say that somebody had ransomware and they got $5 million, but the day after you paid me, the FBI reported that they got the $5 million back. Like, what kind of currency is that? I don't understand. So, if you told me that Bitcoin is just, do you remember there was something called Tulip Mania?
Sure.
Right? This Bitcoin is Tulip Mania. There's no reason why tulips went up in price. There's no reason why Bitcoin goes up in price. So, I want to get paid in a currency that tomorrow will be worth basically the same as it is today. Okay, I don't want to wake up where it's worth twice as much or more likely half as much. My simple brain cannot handle Bitcoin. And I listen to these arguments about, why it's so great. And I want something stable for my currency. My books, my writing, my podcasts, selling stuff. That's where I take my risk. I would like to think that once I take the risk and God help me, I succeed, that's the last risk I have to take. I don't want to take another risk where it says, oh, depending on Elon Musk's emoji, you might have made more money or less money. I don't understand that. Now, if you tell me it's just rolling the dice, to use, your kind of vernacular, if it's just a freaking online game and the value is just like whatever it is, okay, I understand that, but don't start telling me that it's the future of currency because it has, inherent intellectual advantages. I do not. You want me to tell you how I really feel?
No, I love it. A good, solid negative position on Bitcoin. People are scared to do that these days. Even when Warren Buffett was asked in his annual meeting of shareholders, he's like, I'll pass on that one.
Oh, yeah? Is that right?
Yeah. And then Charlie Munger's, it's rat poison. But
when somebody, passes on it, it means they're negative, right? If they're positive.
Right.
Just because somebody says they think it's going to be successful, that doesn't mean. First of all those people who are Bitcoin evangelists, they're kind of conflicted, right? So I read someplace that now you can put the Bitcoins into your 401ks. Well, that is a real smart thing, right? You can put your retirement. Oh, God, I don't want to.
I love it.
Meanwhile,
I like the boldness.
2030 Bitcoin is 5 million each, and guys looking like a schmuck.
Yeah. It's easy to predict the past, as we said, right?
Well, listen, this is the guy who left Apple twice, right? So what do I know? You want to make money in Bitcoin? Go opposite of me.
Last question. This is I'm sitting here, I'm looking at you right now, and you're full of life. You said you were surfing and you were in the water a couple hours ago, catching waves. People who are 25 aren't doing that. Give all of us a tip.
Yeah,
there's plenty of people who are 25 that are sitting at home on their couch right now that aren't going to leave their house for the next 72 hours for sure.
Where?
What? You don't think?
Where?
You don't think we have an entire generation of video game players who are stuck at home?
Oh! I thought you meant they were confined because they're working so hard.
Oh, no. I'm sorry. Yeah. No, just sloth.
Okay. Those people.
You're living this high energetic life, and it's cool. And like I think I think you're a great inspiration for people that want to when people think about like, yeah, my life has been good, man. I'm living in Santa Cruz. I'm surfing every day. That's cool. How do we get there, Guy? Last question.
How do you get there? Well, first of all, I'm 67 years old. Okay. So when I was at 25, I wasn't surfing all day. God, I started surfing at 60. God help me. If I had fallen in love with surfing at 18, 12, or 6, there was no way that I would be where I am today. So thank God I found it late, because it would have taken over my life. I think surfing is the most fun you can have legally. So how do you get there? I wish you know what? The bottom line is grit. It's just work your ass off. That's it. I don't know what else to tell you. I mean, you either work your ass off or you inherit a trust fund. Those are the only two options that I know. And I work my ass off. The secret to Guy's success is I am willing to grit it out. I'm willing to grind it out. I can outwork most people.
Fantastic. Well, Guy, thank you so much. What a fun conversation. Thanks so much for taking the time today. I really enjoyed this.
All right. So, I'm going to see you in Malta someday.
I'll see you in Malta when your cruise ship stops here.
Yeah, my cruise ship stops in Malta. I'm going to come see you. We're going into an air-conditioned building and looking at nerds at computer screens, right?
That's right. You're going to set up, you're going to pull out your phone, you're going to quickly set up an online gaming account, and we're going to fire away, and we're going to win some money.
Okay. I'm going to hold you to that.
All right, Guy. Take care. Thanks so much.
All right. Take care.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thanks.